Hey guys, before we jump into our show as normal today, I want to just take a second to tell you that I'm going to be running a new web class. It's going to be how to crack the code to fitness, money, and sex without selling your soul or becoming a disciplined robot. In it, I'm going to be talking about some of the most powerful self-development techniques that I've learned over my decade of being a life coach, okay? Like, I had to learn some pretty intense stuff to learn how to get guys off of porn. Because, like, think about it. You can't just go to a drug rehab center or whatever, and your drug dealer, your phone is typically in your pocket. So it's like, it was a unique problem, which in many ways encapsulates a lot of the problems that guys face in this world. We've got so much potential, but our technology for vice and distraction has outpaced our methods for personal development. And so in this web class, I'm going to be teaching you 3 incredibly powerful secrets for helping you unlock your potential so that you can become the man that you want to be. So if you want to catch this free web class, make sure you click the link below and come out live. All right. So I'll see you there. Time to hit it. All right. Can you hear me now? Hear that sweet music?
I can hear it now.
All right. All right, welcome to another episode of Man vs. World. I am your host, Mark Quepin, and I am joined, as always, by Pete. Pete, how you doing, my friend?
I'm doing great. It's good to be back.
Yeah, sorry for missing a week. Well, basically, as you can see behind me, I mean, it looks pretty similar, but different place now. I have moved. Those of you who have followed me for a while, you know that I tend to move a lot. You might think that is a hobby of mine. It is not. I actually hate moving more than anything else. It is the most tragic and unpleasant thing that can happen that is not actually a bad thing. I hate it so much, I can't even tell you. So I've been hustling today. I've even been drinking coffee today, Pete. I haven't.
Oh, wow.
I don't know the last time I had coffee. I was just like, I had so much I had to get done today that I was just like, that's it. I'm going back to the normie juice. I heard someone call it coffee normie juice one time, and it was just such a good line. So it's not bad. It's not bad for me. I noticed if I do it just kind of like one day every once in a while. Otherwise, it steals my soul. It steals my power, and it guarantees a breakdown. Like, not breakdown, a complete dip in energy by around 3 o'clock in the afternoon. So my goal is to my plan is to just keep drinking it through that point today.
There you go. If I drink coffee at 8 o'clock in the morning, I won't be able to sleep that night. So
really,
I stay away from it. Yeah.
So you're hypersensitive to it. I'm not, thankfully. It never really affected my sleep too much. It was more just like it gave me such an uneven energy throughout the day. But my dad, he'll pound like a cup of coffee and like literally fall asleep. So maybe I got some of that in me too, which is kind of nice, I guess. Anyway, man, what's been going on? These should be some super premium clips you have for me today, since you've had 2 weeks to get them together.
They're pretty good. They're pretty good. This first one here comes to us from Terry Crews because he had a little appearance on the Tim Ferriss show.
Okay.
And this is him talking about the time his wife confronted him on his porn use.
Yeah, he was one of the first like celebrities, still one of actually the only like big names out there who is willing to even like mention the porn problem. So
yeah,
interested to see what he says here.
My wife finally confronted me on it. Then I would say, well, I'm a man, and men, I have a high sex drive and this kind of stuff, and I'll pull out that card. And then my wife declined it, and she was out. And you know what, Tim? What's so crazy is that I was like, fine, bye, leave. I'm Terry Crews. I can get any woman I want. In fact, I will. And you know what? This is a normal thing in Hollywood. Divorce is pretty normal and it's not a big deal. In fact, my career won't suffer. And nobody cares if I lose my family. Hollywood certainly doesn't. And then I listened to myself talking like that. And I went, who are you? Like, I didn't like that guy. And I started to have internal conversations with myself. And I was like, man, this is not who you say you are. And I realized I was two different people.
Yeah, I love that. Because it talks about kind of a couple of really big and important things. One is the split mind problem they talked about there at the end, where it's like I was two different people. But the first one I want to talk about is how infectious the mindsets of your environment are. Because this is one of the most powerful things that shapes your life is what are the belief systems of the environment you operate in. Okay, because this is like you've heard people talk about how like if you want to get successful, or it's like your success is the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with or something like that. I forget how the actual saying goes, but the idea is that who you hang around with will determine what you can accomplish. And in many ways, it's not 100% certain, but it has so much power. It's like if you are not being surrounded by people who fill you with empowering beliefs, mindsets, and aspirations, then you're going to be having to swim upstream in order to succeed. So he's talking about this toxic Hollywood culture that just, it's just like, divorce is commonplace. Using porn is commonplace. This is just what you do. Oh, you don't like it? Oh, you've got standards? Bye, right? It's like, that in any other time in history, well, I don't know about, people have always been messed up, but in traditional healthy cultures, that is not the way things work. Okay. It's like, you don't, it's basically like, yeah, my virtual prostitutes are normal. And if you don't like it, get over it. That's an absurd thing. And it's also, for most guys, it would be an extreme double standard. Like, if the woman was doing something comparable, there's no way they would be cool with it. Right. So I think it's great that he was able to recognize, this is kind of infected me and it's not a good thing. But then, he goes and he starts talking about this split mind that, I'm kind of like, I realized, man, I started talking to myself, right? When you start talking to yourself, this is where you can really start changing the game of your trajectory in life. Because what most of us have, especially if we're struggling with something, is we have a split mind. We've got 2 different kind of sub-personalities in our mind, which kind of metaphorically is often portrayed as like, the devil on one shoulder and the angel on the other. But in reality, it's usually a lot more complicated than that, because both sides can have mistakes. Maybe the angel side is judgmental and, fire and brimstone. It's like, using porn makes you an evil person. And the other side says, using porn is awesome, right? And both of them need to be tweaked. It's, ultimately it's not good for you, but it also doesn't make you an evil person, right? So learning how to actually get these 2 parts talking to each other so that you can start figuring out, what do I really want? What can both sides of me agree to? This is where real progress starts being made, because until you reach this point, and this is something like that I had to discover on the deepest levels with guys when it came to figuring out how to get them to quit porn, was like, you have to find out like what both sides of you would agree to. Because if you don't do this, if you don't find that middle ground where it's like, oh yeah, this is true from both perspectives. Like, yeah, I can feel this emotionally and rationally, I also know this is true. Until you can find that, then basically what you're in is a war of self-repression, where it's like, I'm going to have to try and squash this one part of me and keep this other side on top. Well, that just doesn't work, right? Like if you just tell yourself to like white knuckle through a big diet change, it's like, I'm just not going to eat these cookies that I'm addicted to, but you're just going to squash this part down. Well, it's just like, you're going to just keep it's like you're throwing, garbage in the closet, You just keep repressing these unwanted emotions till eventually there's no more room left in the closet. The lock breaks and it pours out all over the floor, which means that you go out and pound like 12 boxes of Oreos. So this same thing happens with everything else. It's like you cannot win a war against yourself. There must be a peace agreement, and the only way you get that is through self-introspection, through self-talk, where you get these two parts in conversation, in communion, to unlock what is the real path forward. And, just like with any kind of relationship issues, getting some help can be useful. A huge amount of my content is devoted to this. I have a whole self-talk series that's about this. And in my new self-mastery club stuff that I'm going to be rolling out here soon, I'm going to get even more into this. But, if you're trying to quit porn, you're trying to engage in any kind of big habit change, understanding both of these things, your environment as well as that split mind and how to rectify it, those things are, they're fundamental.
Would you say, you talk about having these two pieces work together? Another way to, that I've thought about this personally, and I'm curious to get your idea on this and your take on this, is that repression is kind of like ignoring darkness and hoping that it goes away when you're in a dark room and you're trying to figure out which way to go. But speaking truth in response to the lies that you've identified is kind of like turning on the light switch or lighting a candle or a lantern or something. And it doesn't matter really how dark that room is. If you know the truth the truth that is the antidote to that darkness, it'll kind of light up that room. Is that something that you've used with clients in the past as well? Or is that kind of a way of thinking about it that works for you as well? Or do you think that there's a distinction there?
Well, so I would say it's right. And that's definitely that's like an age-old metaphor. You can find that in the Bible and probably even places before that. The thing that seems to be a little bit different, it's almost like the darkness inside of us. Like there's two ways you could think of it. You could think of it as like it's like stuck. It's almost like ice. It needs to be melted. Like it's not something where it's like light is instantaneous. It's like you shine into a shadow, it's gone. Right?
Right.
But with the way our brains are formed, sometimes it takes conditioning. Okay. It's like that light, imagine it's a torch and you're going to have to like actually, melt some ice with it, and this, that kind of thing. Or you can maybe think of it as instead of ice, it's like tunnels. It's like, all right, I've got this light, but I have to travel all the way down into all of these tunnels, lighting all of these torches all of the way. And so like there's a reconditioning process that needs to occur. So as long as you account for that, you can do it. And, in many ways, I think a lot of times the miraculous recoveries that a lot of people have, I believe actually in miracles, so I don't know why I scare quoted that, but like when you have a flash change, I do believe those things are possible, but it's got to hit just the right thing. It's like you light that one torch that is like connected to like, it's like a dynamite fuse that like goes through and lights a million other torches. So it's like, yeah, a single truth can unlock everything in a flash, and it sometimes does. And maybe you've even, people out there, you've experienced things like that, or you've seen loved ones who just had that miraculous seeming conversion. But for most of us, that's not the way it tends to work. It tends to be, one little torch at a time where you are, really internalizing truths and making them be the thing that reflexively comes up in your mind.
Interesting. Yeah. That's an interesting way to look at it. And, one thing too is you got to actually light that torch, because if you don't light it, it's not going to help you out, and sometimes that's the hard part too.
Right.
It's like,
that's the thing.
You got to actually light the thing.
Well, it's lighting it, finding the truth, looking for it, but then it's also taking it to the dark places. Because that's the thing. Yeah. So a lot of guys, they know the truth, but what they don't do is they won't speak that truth into the part that's, most scary, right? It's like, this is the guy who, he has a massive deadline coming up. He's got a big project due and he hasn't started working on it. What that guy avoids at all costs is thinking about that project and how much it sucks that he's not doing it and how much better his life would be if he just started. Okay. He refuses to hold that truth in his mind. It's kind of like, it's that dark closet that he doesn't want to open up and shine the light inside because he doesn't want to see what's there. And so, so much of this stuff, it's like, once you start doing it, it's never the big deal. It's just, It's just getting into it, right? It's just actually confronting what the thing is.
Right on, right on. Alrighty, next up, we got a unique perspective from Andrew Huberman on how to find love. Let's go ahead and check this out.
Let's see.
Any advice on finding the love of your life?
When I was in graduate school, I didn't want a girlfriend. I just wanted to be in lab, and I had romantic dating interests, but I wasn't going to meet them through a committed, live together situation. It wasn't where I was at. And as a postdoc, things are a little different, et cetera, et cetera. So, but at some point, it's sort of like, what do I want my daily routine to look like? Because ultimately, a relationship, however one structures it, is going to be part of your daily routine. So at the point where you're like, I'd really love to wake up next to somebody and do blank and blank together, and then I'd love to work, and then we meet for dinner, and then we take the dog for a walk or take kids out or whatever it happens to be. One has to be in the mindset of wanting to do couple like things.
Yeah.
People, and a lot of people don't think about it that way. They either fall into something, or they don't see the benefits of coupling up.
Okay. Yeah, that's a really cool point that he's making there. And this is something that I'll do with coaching clients a lot when they're setting a big vision. Like, say they're trying to figure out the career that they want to pursue, or they're trying to figure out, what kind of exercise routine they want to do, or whatever it is, some kind of like significant life change. One of the things I always try and make them do is not just like, what do you want and why do you want it? It's, what does it look like when you are living this thing? Because very often the idea of something is not the same thing as what it actually is to live it. Okay. Like, I remember when I was a teenager, I had a lot of friends who were very into making music, and I was myself as well. And we all wanted to be musicians. We all wanted to be successful and that sort of thing. But the reality of what it takes to be a musician, it's not just like being popular and having screaming fans. What it means is like, you're going to have to spend a shitload of time practicing your instrument. You're going to have to spend a lot of time engaged in songwriting. Okay. Like, that's not an easy or comfortable process, especially people who are not used to it. It's like, you have to actually think about it. Like, a lot of the people who like, oh, I'm going to be a rapper, it's like, well, do you really know what goes into that? Like, what does the day-to-day of a rapper look like? Think it out. Imagine it. Is that really a life you want to live? One of the more popular things I heard is that, like, with the younger generation right now is like, they want to become YouTubers. It's like, do you know what it looks like to be a YouTuber? It's like, people see the final product of something and they try and judge whether they want it or not. That's not the way to do it. You have to think, what did it take to create that final product, right? And so this is smart that he applied this to relationships, because, what you see in a relationship, a lot of guys, maybe they'll think of it as, sex with just one person for forever. I want to keep my options open. It's like, well, what does that look like? It means that you're constantly scrolling through Tinder. You're constantly starting conversations that go nowhere with people. You're constantly having to get to know people over and over and over again, which, is great if you're terrified of anyone actually getting to know you, right? I think a lot of people have deep intimacy fears because, maybe they feel like there's nothing good about them deep down, or they're insecure, or, who knows. But what would it look like for you to stay in this perpetual hookup phase? It means that you're going to keep having sex with someone you don't care about. You're going to have to keep realizing that, I'm never going to have someone who really knows me. And that, you spend so much of your time in this acquisition phase, you never actually get to go deeper with anyone. So when you think about like long-term relationships, I think that they're just better if you do it right. If you do it right and you really try and like partner with someone, like, it's just so much more of an adventure. It's so much more of a journey. It just goes so much deeper. But we live in a world that's just that's all about what is the highest stimulation you can acquire at the least amount of effort. And that, in a relationship, it comes right in the beginning during that honeymoon phase. So people just chase that shit. And it's not even that. Like, most people don't even reach the honeymoon phase. It's like they reach the what do we want to call it? It's like the porn culture extraction of the honeymoon phase, which is, I'm just going to get the hot sex. That's what I'm going to gun for, and I'm just going to go for that over and over and over again. But the problem is, like, you're never even going to be like building any intimacy, any connection. Maybe you get some tension and release, but if that's all you get, I mean, you can have great sex in a marriage, 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, like into it, right? So it's like, if you want great sex, in fact, it seems like, I think the studies say that sex is actually better in married couples than it is during, obviously drunken hookups, but the one night stand hookup culture stuff, because you get to know each other, you get to know what you like, you get to do all of that. So anyway, man, like, what I'm trying to say here is that it's good to think about things in terms of what does it look like if you apply it to your life? What does it look like if you really live this thing out? Because that's what's going to give you the biggest perspective on whether a path is good for you or not. So get in the habit of doing that for sure.
Alrighty, our buddy Losta sent this one in from the community, and when he sent this over, he said that this is one of those guys that he's totally aligned with until he's completely not. So let's check this out.
Okay, yeah, I know this guy. Let's see.
You should quit porn right now. This is coming from a porn star. Why should you quit porn? Well, it screws with your arousal levels, it screws with your sex drive, it screws around with your ambition, your motivation, your discipline. It screws around with your dopamine levels in your brain because it's very habit forming. There's basically zero positive side effects to regularly consuming pornography, besides lining my pockets because you're paying for my day job. So cut that shit out, stop watching porn. You should quit porn.
Interesting. Yeah, Sterling Cooper, he's got an interesting path here, and I like in general what he's trying to do. He's trying to help guys. He's trying to help guys improve their sex lives, their masculinity, all this kind of stuff. But I think what's missing and is a fundamental moral framework for the guy. I haven't seen anything like that. It's just like, it's at a certain point, it comes down to basically pragmatism, right? And pragmatism is not a bad thing. You can quit porn for practical reasons. But if we're going to get fully pragmatic with something, then there's a case to be made that you can use it in moderation and you'll be fine. Right? You can maybe argue, well, it'd be dangerous. You'd have to, condition yourself to not to use it too much. And yeah, that would take extra effort, but it could be done. It can. The mind is incredibly plastic. And if you know good self-development techniques, especially the kind of stuff that I teach, like, you could learn how to do that. You could. But at the end of the day, like, if you really want to have power in your life, like, you want to be able to truly shape your life, you have to have a direction. What are you shaping it toward? And in order to do that, you have to have some axiomatic beliefs about yourself, what's important, what's good, and what's bad. And so when we have he's in the self-development space, but he's essentially amoral. Amoral self-development, I think it leads you kind of nowhere. Because this is something that I've seen in a lot of people, myself included, especially when, before I had kind of like my religious or spiritual, like, reawakening in my early 20s, is that the whole thing, ironically, which, his whole thing's about, quitting porn and whatever, but like, self-development without any kind of moral aspiration is just another form of masturbation. It is. It's just, you're just bring yourself pleasure for what? For what? Is there a greater good that you serve? Well, how do you define that greater good? Well, in order to define that greater good, you need to have a moral framework. You need to have a philosophical framework. And without this, you then actually lack direction. Jordan Peterson talks about this all the time, is that without some kind of fundamental moral framework, there is no way to tell which path you should take, because there's a million different paths, right? And so if you want to be able to actually live life to the fullest, you need a path. Because otherwise, you're just going to spend your time wandering around looking for a path. And that's not the fun part. The fun part is really pursuing things that you love. That's what your brain is designed for. Your brain is designed to be kind of like this seeking mechanism where you're seeking better and better. And so if you want to get the most out of that, you got to have some kind of ultimate aim. Now, at the same time, like what he's saying here, it's true. Quit porn. It's garbage for you. It's horrible for you. It's just, it's just a massive neurochemical disruption that steals your power and everything like that. But at the end of the day, it's like, why are you doing it? Do you believe your sexuality is meant for something more? Or is this just another form of biohacking that's designed to, make your life better for some, without providing any greater alignment to some higher cause or meaning or purpose. So I don't know, maybe that sounds like splitting hairs to some of you guys out there, but once you realize you can do whatever you want, once you realize that you do have the tools for self-mastery, which is something that I'm going to be getting much more in detail about with my new self-mastery club, the question is like, what the heck are you going to do with it? You know, so you get off of porn, so what? What are you going to do? Where are you going to go? Why are you going to do it? And without those answers, then chances are you're going to have a big old empty spot in your life. And then what are you going to do with that? You're probably just going to go back to porn because, hey, feels good, right? Why not? So find your bigger purpose, your bigger calling, your bigger framework. I think it's essential.
Yeah, you know, it's kind of funny. A lot of guys are doing this to help themselves out, and rightly so. It does help you out. But if your motivations are purely self-centered and that's the only reason you're doing it for, like that's the only person you're doing it for, yeah, you're right. It's just for what? What's the point, really?
Right, exactly.
Yeah. Alrighty, let's see here. What do we got? Oh, this is an interesting one here. So this one reads, this is a Business Insider article, and the headline reads, "Anti-capitalism is flooding TikTok as young people question a life that prioritizes productivity over well-being." And this is one of the clips that they had linked on that article. Let's take a look.
Like many young adults, I used to want an enjoyable and meaningful life. It is until I discovered capitalism. Now, I live in a society where my productivity matters more than my well-being, and so I'm just depressed and anxious all the time. I'm smiling, but I'm deeply wounded. I work 3 jobs and I still feel like I'm not doing enough. Crazy, right? Unfortunately, capitalism is not free 99. But you know what's free 99? Federal income taxes for billionaires. Escándalo! If you subscribe to capitalism today, you can also get emotional exhaustion, inequality, and if you're lucky, feeling dead inside. Oops! And don't forget climate change! So what are you waiting for? Work harder to make sure the rich gets richer and start subscribing to capitalism today! Like many young adults.
Okay, interesting. What do you know? What is that pendant there? That's not a.
I didn't even notice that. I have no idea.
Yeah, I can't tell. I was gonna say it might be is this a communist guy or something? Like, is that a Chairman Mao pendant? Because here's the thing:
You never know.
The communist idea is becoming more and more popular, obviously. And you know, I'm not a political pundit or anything like that, but the thing that's perfectly obvious to me is that capitalism is not the fundamental issue that this guy's talking about. Okay, like there is 100% corruption. Okay, corruption screws everything up. When people, are taking advantage of the system in a way that really screws it up for everybody. We should do things to prevent that. But at the end of the day, like people complaining about capitalism in most cases have no idea what the alternatives are. There are these theoretical better places out there, but I haven't seen them. I haven't heard them. Like, yeah, there are different places in the world from United States that do certain things better, but what do you want? Like me, I'm a person who wants to have freedom. And this is something that is unique maybe to people of my psychological alignment. Okay, because not everybody wants freedom. I work for myself. Like the last thing I want to do is work for someone else. I want to be fully as responsible as I possibly can for my results and my failures. I don't want to have someone put a ceiling on my success. So I like maximum freedom, maximum responsibility. The problem is there's a lot of people don't want that. Right? Like we saw during the pandemic, how many people just want to be told what to do. They want to be told what to do so bad. And then what else do they want to do? They want to tell other people what to do. Right? And so anyone who's looking for freedom, anyone who's fighting for a system that enables freedom, both the good and the bad that comes with freedom, then that person, it's their fault that my life sucks. It's like, oh, you're working 3 jobs. Okay, well, hey, maybe you're in a tough period right now and you're trying to just break through to something better. But maybe you made some bad choices. How often, how much of that is going on? You know, like we always got to look at how much are you really responsible for with all of this kind of thing, because it's so easy to get into the blame game. It's such a seductive narrative.
Oh, it is.
Where it's just like, your problems, it's not your fault. It's not your fault. It's that guy's fault. You should hate him. And while you're hating him, make sure you donate to my campaign, right? It's messed up. Like, I'm an ownership based kind of person. And so when I get this kind of thing, it's like, I'm not saying that there aren't massive problems with our current system, but you're not going to, you definitely didn't present any alternative here. You just kind of shit on the best system that we've gotten so far, more or less. And I don't know, it's just an edgy young person trying to be edgy and young, as far as I can tell. But there's also old people who do this too, who are, they get less grace in my eyes.
You know, it's kind of interesting. It's, you know, because this wasn't the only clip. It apparently TikTok has got several of these roaming around. And,
well, TikTok is, who's TikTok owned by?
Well, that does lead to some interesting questions, yes. But without going into that particularly, why do you think it is that people feel like, is it because they're just cogs in a machine, someone else's machine? They don't own the machine. That's why they feel like they're just, the productivity is being squeezed for something they don't care about, and that's why they feel like their productivity is prioritized over well-being. Why are those exclusive things? I think about my own well-being. Part of my own well-being includes being a productive person. You know what I mean? So,
Right.
Like, that's
I
part
think,
of that equation.
I mean, part of it is like, it's just the way that technology has changed things. Like, in the past, I've talked about this before, but like in the past, like, a man had a path in life. Okay. So, you know, it's like he would follow in his father's footsteps, or he would like go an apprentice under someone. But he knew pretty much at a young age what his options were. And all of those options had a path to at least stability, you know, or potential stability, depending on what culture you're in, what tribe you're in, at what time period, you know, the quality of life that would bring you would vary, but at least it was clear. Today, the clear path up until, you know, the last couple decades was like, oh, you got to go to college. You go to college, then you'll be fine. You know, before that it was, you go to high school, you'll find something, it'll be okay. But like today, multiple things have happened where, all right, one, you go to college, that doesn't necessarily get you a great job anymore. And two, our expectations of what is enough, what is satisfactory, have skyrocketed because of how much we see as possible, right? We see, people aren't content with less. They want more because they see more. And so I think that's a big piece of all of this. And I'm not here to tell people to want less, but it's like, if you want the good big things, you got to play the game better. You can't just say, this game is dumb because I'm not getting what I want. Now, some people, they do have it bad. They are dealt a bad hand. I'm not trying to minimize that. You know, I've been very lucky and very blessed in many ways, and, you know, being supported by, you know, a great family. Not many people, I don't want to say not many, but a lot of people don't have that. So, you know, I get that. There are issues with things being fair, but, you know, what are you going to do? It's like, you just want to keep taking from other people. You want to be demanding that people who are more successful give you what you want. That's just saying that I want to be a thief. That's the way I see it. You know, people, it gets to be a complex conversation then about, you know, taxation and all that kind of shit. But, you know, I think that if we really want to solve this problem, it happens in our education system. If you train people to be cogs, and that cog does not lead to a happy life anymore, like you go through school, just follow directions, just do what I say, that's how you get the grade. Well, guess what? After you get out of school, there's no more direction. You being a cog, the only way you can get hired as a cog is if you go work at a cog in some machine that, you know, like a business, a company that may or may not have your best interest in mind, may not really value, may not lead you anywhere good. And so it's like, we have to stop training people to be cogs. We have to train people to be creators, independent thinkers. And people are going to be able to do that to varying degrees, but you got to at least have some of it. Otherwise, you're going to be like this smug little fella and dissatisfied with yourself.
Oh man, Alrighty, let's see. Next up, we got a podcast called Nudge. Now, I'd never heard of this podcast before, but I was listening through it, and the host, Phil Agnew, said something interesting. He said, quote, "When we think of influence, we think of influences, but we rarely think about ourselves. We don't tend to think about the influence we naturally have, which is why you probably have more influence than you think." And this kind of led me to an interesting question, because there's so many TED Talks and books on influence and how to get more of it. It's something people desire, myself included. But I wanted to ask you, do you think the good steward principle kind of applies with influence? Meaning, how can we be faithful with the little influence that we do have? How can we recognize that influence, use it for good, so that we can be then qualified to have more of it?
Yeah, I think that's pretty much the way it works if you want to do it right? Like say you're going to adopt a spiritual perspective on life, okay? Then the way you'd have to look at it is like, all right, God, he's given you a game wherever you're at, okay? And it's like a level. And there are certain things that you have to do to progress to the next level. And so I think most people, kind of like the last guy we were looking at there, complaining about, things not being fair. Is he really playing the game to the best of his ability right now? Because I think so many people, they have obvious things in front of them that they could be doing, but they're not. They're just not. And I'm not saying that they have to just try harder or whatever, but they might need to just be more humble. Because in my life, most of the places where I was really stuck, it was because I refused to be humble enough to address the problems that I actually had. Like back when I first started to try to be a life coach, okay, I was addicted to porn and video games. And to me, I just wasn't honest with myself about that. I was like, it's just normal. It's fine. This is the way people live. But there was no way that I was going to be successful in that until I actually addressed those things so I could be congruent, right? So it's like, if you want to be taking your life to the next level, then look at the things in your current life that you can already level up and do those things and see what happens. You hear about this kind of stuff all the time about these ripple effects that people can have. I've heard people transform their life by just starting to get up earlier. I've heard one guy say, so just me making a big solid breakfast for myself every morning, with like eggs and bacon and doing it right every morning, that set the tone for the rest of my day and it transformed my life. I've heard other people say it's like, well, I just started doing this one thing. I just started dressing better, or, I started praying or something. It's like, they make a little tweak that they know is good for them. And then that creates a ripple effect that allows them to do more and more and more and more. And so figuring out how to find that path for yourself can be tricky until you learn how to relate to yourself. And this is what I really like this new self-mastery club that I'm launching is about. It's about learning how to find that path. And there's always a path. We all have a mission in life, but most of us, we've lost our compass to doing it. And what this is, like, if you to boil it down, the essential part of it is that we all have a feeling. If we look at our life, we look at all the options in front of us, and we say, which of these is most appropriate for me to address right now? Okay? And I'm not saying just looking at the big bad things. Look at all the little things too. And you ask yourself, and sometimes you're going to think about it, and the thought of it's just going to go clunk in your heart. It's going to feel like, that's not really what I want to do. That sounds too hard. that sounds too overwhelming. Okay? But you're going to hear, eventually you're going to reach something where it's like, you feel like there's ringing in your heart. It's like, yep, I know that should change. Yep, that's definitely something that's top priority for me right now. You're going to feel this resonance with it, okay? And then at that point, the journey begins. The self-mastery journey begins. And when I say self-mastery, I'm not talking about like self-domination or just learning how to force yourself to do something. I'm talking about how to actually have a master / a master to hero relationship. So you can think of your rational mind as like the master, the Yoda-like character, your emotional self as like the hero, the Luke Skywalker, right? The master is powerful and smart. It knows what to do, but it can't do the work on its own. It needs the hero. The hero is the one who has to actually go out and do the things. And when you would adopt this kind of mentality inside of yourself, where you can speak to yourself, you can engage in self-conversation, you can coach yourself, you can inspire yourself. You can do that from the rational mind. Well, guess what? That starts to unlock your emotional self. And that emotional self then gives you the power to start making those changes that you have resonance with. And it's learning how to navigate this path of resonance while you're steering with the rational mind, but then you're moving from your heart. This is what unlocks your path in life, your quest, your main quest, okay? And until you make this your main mode of operation, you're just going to be spinning in side quests and mini games your whole life. You're never actually going to progress the main plot. You're never really going to level up and get all the best loot and, reach the higher levels of existence. And so if you're interested in this kind of stuff, make sure you check out the Self Mastery Club. Pete, are we going to be having the webinar link here for this?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, so what I want you guys to do, if you're interested in learning more about this, learning about my new Self Mastery platform, Self Mastery Club platform, which is going to be the replacement of Universal Man, my Vanguard, and that kind of stuff, it's all going to be coalescing under this Self Mastery banner, because this is the key. This is the key to everything. If you can learn how to tap into that, if you can learn how to live your life from this perspective, well, it unlocks everything else for you. The more self-mastery you have, the more you get of what you want. And so, once that became, clear to me, it's like, oh, well, that's got to be the thing. That's got to be the number one focus. And this isn't even a crazy thing. This is something that you are meant to do. You are meant to be the master of yourself. If you're meant to be the master of anything, think about it. If you're meant to be the master of literally anything in the universe, what would it be? It'd be of you, right? And most of us, we don't have that at all. We're completely, at the mercy of our impulses and cravings and habit patterns and things like that. And so it's like, you really want to change your life. It's learning how to shift this kind of stuff, shift your habits, shift your mindset, change the way that you show up in the world. And that's what's going to give you the best results, hands down.
Guys, we'll see you on the webinar. I'm looking forward to seeing you there live, because we're going to be doing it live.
Yeah, that's right. So the webinar is called How to Crack the Code to Fitness, Money, and Sex Without Selling Your Soul or Becoming a Disciplined Robot. So it's a great webinar. I'm going to be covering some massive secrets here that I've learned in my 10 years of being a life coach, of being an addiction recovery expert. In the process of helping guys quit porn, that's arguably one of the hardest things to do today, because it's not like you can go to a rehab center or anything like that. It's like your drug dealer's in your pocket. How are you going to get yourself to do that? Well, I had to dive deep into the mechanics of personal development, willpower, all this kind of stuff. And the stuff I found there, yes, it helped people quit porn. But once you start applying it to other areas of your life, it's like a cakewalk. So that's what I'm trying to do, is I'm going to be showing you guys the secrets of how to do all that stuff. So if you want to learn this, make sure you check out this webinar. We're going to be doing it live this week. You can check the link below. Make sure you opt in. Make sure you come live.
I can't wait to hang out with you guys in Self Mastery Club. It's going to be a fun time.
Yeah, it's going to be great. So thank you guys for watching. Appreciate you all. Ooh, yeah. See you in the next one.